everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops, where we get to talk to the practitioners, to the thought leaders who help CS operations happen. I'm Matthew Lind out of Austin, Texas, and I'm with my co-host, Jean Naran,
Hey Matthew. Hey everyone.
live from Canada. And true to form, as I've done on several recent episodes, I brought another Austinite to the table. So, well, we're excited to have James Ofczarzak here.
Yes.
Oh, I had it right in our pregame and then I blew it. So why don't you do it for us, James?
James Ofczarzak. Usually I say,
Ofczarzak.
usually I'll
All
say,
right.
but Ofczarzak. You got it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Who's customer success operations manager at Hierology, and fellow Austinite. Although we'll get your hometown, or not your hometown, but your actual town, right? It's Georgetown, Texas, and I know you're very proud of that because when on the occasions we get to meet, you are definitely wearing the Georgetown swag. So we'll get that in there too. But it's a delight to have you here, James. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Really appreciate being able to sit down and talk with you guys.
I'm so excited. I've met so many Austinites through Matthew that I feel like I'll be going home if I ever go to Austin. And so thanks for joining us. Maybe just to get started, like, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of what's your origin story look like in getting
Sure.
into CS ops?
Yeah, absolutely. Took a while for me to get there. Out of college, I lived and worked in Latin America for a couple of years, moved to Austin, got involved in some nonprofits here for a few years. And then, funny enough, Spanish is kind of what opened up the door to the customer success world to me. So I started off as a CSM at a company based here in Austin, and my main role was really to kind of serve our Latin America population. Um, so the majority of my time in CS has been as a CSM, working with the book of business. However, I've uh, worked for companies that have already always had Gainsight in the mix, so definitely got a good dose of what it looks like to do customer success alongside some really good technology uh, and strategy behind that. So speeding things up. The last couple of companies I was at were more startup companies that were dabbling with more data-driven customer success and trying to piece it all together using different types of technologies. And I played a role in those companies for um, throughout that process, but then finally was able to kind of do a right turn with my career and settle firmly within the CS ops world and have just been loving it ever since.
James, I get an inside look sometimes at what you're up to, and we've gotten to talk a lot. You have always come with this very strong vision for what CS ops can do for a CS team, and even when you were wearing the CSM hat, I remember having conversations with you, of like, but if I could just be an ops, we could do this and we could accelerate that, and I've got a vision for how this should go. What is some of that vision? Like, where do you see CS Ops being a strategic partner? And how have you sort of laid down some of that vision now that you're in the seat, and running with it?
Yeah, really good question. I think first of all, I think I think the reason that is my first experience as a CSM was at a company that had already had a kind of a strategic leader who had a really great understanding of the customer journey and was talking with the org about our customer journey, educating us, helping us to develop it even more. And we fortunately had technology in place that helped us to operationalize that journey. So my first 3 years, I was kind of thrown into an ideal state for a CS org. I'm not saying we did everything perfect, but certainly my first experience was just a gold star. Loved it and learned a lot. Um, and so I've always seen it as very crucial. We actually, it was back in 2015. 2016, 2017 that I was at that company, and CS ops was not yet a profession, but we certainly, as I think about it, had two full-time CS ops folks in play among our team, and so we couldn't have done what we did without them. Um, so I've always had that lens when I've stepped into new CSM roles. Now, where I'm at, I am able to see kind of a clear delineation of responsibilities where CS is really defining, owning that strategy and vision. And CS ops, in my experience, has been supporting and almost at times being sort of a listening board as well to hear and understand vision. And I've got in my back, in the back of my mind, how things could work with our current technology stack. And so drawing that out over countless thoughtful conversations, and then executing together with our team has been what we've been focused on.
That sounds super cool, and we've had this come up in previous conversations. But like, how do you draw the balance between strategy and technology? Do you spend most of your day in technology, or do you spend like a portion of it, or where does that sort of line stand for you?
Yeah, it's been different at the two companies that, or at the companies that I've been at most recently. Um, I think I'm by nature a tend towards the strategic side of things, and so um, whether or not my my job description is really about has that line item with strategy, I'm always really excited about that conversation with the leaders that I'm working with. But I've seen it both ways in a sense. I think an ideal state, you've got strategic leaders kind of on both sides, um, but yeah, sometimes it just takes a little bit of time to figure out what works best for the current team that you have, and also just how that team, how those organizations were set up, and how are they working together today.
I love it. You got to figure out together. I think it's like that collaboration on that strategy, right? Like you may not have all the answers, but being a collaborator on figuring out where we're going, as opposed to just sitting in the back and rowing as fast as you can,
Yeah.
is so much more effective. So
Yeah, and I think to add to that, um, now having experience within a platform like Gainsight, and with new capabilities coming out, now dipping into the digital customer success era as well. Um, I know that some CS orgs and leaders are really steeped in that as well, that thought leadership, as well. But being close to the technology and obviously being a lot closer to the vendors, I have a really good sense of what's coming down the pipeline, what's possible today, and what will be possible, in a few months or even a few years, which can really help lead to more fruitful conversations about what's possible today and what does our internal roadmap look like.
mhm.
James, how do you share or even think about for yourself some of those roadmap items? Or I'm going to use the word roadmap, maybe you call it something else, but like when you're like, I know these features are coming, so these features may translate into these outcomes for my CS team, and I want to socialize those and get some buy-in so that we're thinking about it ahead of time. How do you sort of get from these are what features are coming to here's the roadmap and I've got buy-in for it into the future?
Yeah. I don't know that I've got it down to a science quite yet, but what I can say is we're fortunate to have a really great CSM for Gainsight, the platform that we use, who we meet with them monthly, and we involve both operations folks, so my team, and then um, our leaders within the CS org as well. And so I tend to, even if I have a bit of a bit insight into where things are going, if I'm, aware of what has already been put out there. I do like to go at the pace and of, what our CSM sees as far as where we're at, what was just released, how are we talking about our strategy, and what can we foresee. So, I mean, in a sense, I kind of, leverage the resource that's already in place to help drive that strategy and do what I can to support that. And I think the biggest value that I'll bring to the table in those conversations are, if the leadership is excited about something, they'll want to know how quickly could we set that up with our org? Like, we know it's available, but how's our data, and how what's the effort look like internally? So being able to assess that and give feedback really helps us together to drive a realistic roadmap of what we can put into play.
And when you're trying to put that into play, like, are you the one, like, are you a one-man band, or are you like, and you're trying to do all of the things, like, so figure out the roadmap and then build it out and stuff like that, or do you work with folks to help you through that?
I do. I've got a teammates, so somebody who reports to me that has been at the company longer and actually has been in our Gainside instance, and knows our data back and forth, or like the back of his hand, which is really helpful. Um, so it's definitely not a one person show, in it by any means. But I would say as well that what really helps me and our department as a whole is a company-wide OKR structure that's been in place at the company for a year or so. And really well designed, very clear and strategic, high level company objectives that roll down into our specific our specific organizations, and lots of intentionality amongst our teams to really make sure that we're focusing on a quarterly basis. What are the few things where we want to move the needle in this upcoming quarter? So that's, determined ahead of any kind of work that me and my team jump into, and I find that extremely helpful. I've been at companies where uh, that's just not been the case.
Mm-hmm.
And what can happen, I think, is with a such a great technology and such great capabilities, it's easy for someone like me to get really excited and to want to do all the things, and just get them done as quickly as possible. And that's great to one, in one sense, that's great. But on the other end, it's like you're just throwing way too much at CSMs and at customers. And so really appreciate a well thought out OKR structure by department.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, change management is definitely a struggle, right? The humans can only take so much.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you're working on? And we won't ask you to spill all the secret sauce of everything under the covers, but like what are some major initiatives you are working on or have worked on at a previous stop where you were like, that really changed the game for us?
Sure. I think so. This quarter, right now, we're focused on a lot on just reporting back to the business what's working and what's not. I'm newer at this company, been here for about 10 months or so. And so my first couple of quarters was a lot of building a few new risk CTAs. We took our first stab at doing a digital business review, which was a really great project to work on. But this quarter, we're really hitting the pause button, and and we are doing an overview of what's working, what's not. We're setting up some internal monthly business reviews where we as leaders come together around the metrics that matter for our company. Um, so we're doing some specific reporting around how our team is handling verified outcomes, how we're operationalizing the outcomes for for communicating with customers, as well as doing an analysis on our advocacy population, sort of a newer stage at Hierology. So we are doing some analysis and learning all that we can about that population, um, so that when we pick things back up next quarter, we'll be able to do so with much more data and much more informed on what's going to move the needle one way or the other.
I love the kind of methodological approach to all of this, like where, you guys seem to like your pause what you're talking about in terms of, just let's inform ourselves a bit more, and then we'll see where we go from here. Is there, and you've had a bit of a journey that's kind of taken you in different directions. Like, is there anything along your journey that kind of you feel has helped you to get to this point that's like equipped you for this sort of business approach that you have, or sort of your way that you attack these problems?
Yeah, I would say um, so much credit I think goes to my current scenario where I'm at now. Um, just with the idea of operating rhythms um, clearly established even before I come in and join the team has just been extremely helpful for me, to be able to continue to be my creative self and continue to think and build and whatnot. But now just having a company-wide understanding of here's what we're really focused on now, and here's, this quarter, and then here's where we're at for the year. So yeah, I mean, a lot of credit to my current leadership, current team that I'm on right now. I feel like if I had had this in previous organizations, I probably would have just started growing and a lot quicker in that sense, like growing in my own personal development and ability to execute. So just strong leadership who have clear vision, and can communicate that vision, I think has been what's most helpful for me.
Right.
James, what's a piece of advice you would have given to yourself, or you would give to yourself from years back? And this will be interesting from you because you've been, you kind of like you've been in and out of CS ops, kind of traversing both sides of the road here, which I think is to your credit. But like, if you could advise, that person coming back from Latin America, who's about to step into something like this, what would you tell them given what you know now?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would go back. Wouldn't wouldn't tell them to change anything necessarily, but rather like, embrace all of these different aspects of your career, for what it's worth. Those experiences that were, check the box of really positive, but then also those other experiences that were like, not so positive. Um, I am I'm thankful for all of those, and I think going back would just be like, hey, appreciate this journey, and yeah, have fun. Because I think it's easy to get kind of caught up when you are in sort of a rut. It's hard to see light at the end of the tunnel, but it's there. It's a tunnel. It's light.
The dark tunnel of data designer. There's light
Golly,
at the end of it, right?
you got it.
I like that though, like because I think you've touched on it a bit that you're playing in strategy, you're playing in technology. There's a certain part of CS ops that is a bit of a chameleon where you're working through, throw me in the ring for whatever you need. If it's this day and the next, it's another thing the next day. But that varied experience that you have, like, probably has equipped you for some of that. So I love that journey. I think that probably, the more varied experience you have to some degree makes you a better CS ops practitioner. And I truly believe that. So thank you so much for sharing that. The
Yeah.
just as another, we talked a little bit over the past. Let's jump ahead, and we've often asked this of other folks here as well. Um, any predictions for the future, or where do you think things are going for CS ops or CS in general?
Um, Probably, let's see. I watched a couple of episodes here of this here podcast, and I don't know that I would add anything other than what folks have already kind of touched on. Digital CS, doing more stuff at scale. I would hone in and maybe add to the idea of and the importance of capturing ROI and capturing value that customers are getting really creative. Because that's like getting really creative on how you're capturing those and getting your team and your tools really equipped to be able to just constantly be looking for moments of value, validation, ROI, and then reporting that back to the customers, so that they know, right? I feel like that will continue to be the driver of success. And I think with all the different digital tools out there today, I think I am seeing this already, but technology is being built specifically around capturing desired outcomes and then figuring out some ways to automate, the achievement of those outcomes. So I'm excited about that trend. We've started to dip into that a little bit at Hierology. So I think that's going to continue to be of importance if I could look into a crystal ball.
It's come up a couple times with other guests, and you're saying it too, of like, especially in this economic moment where every dollar counts, on the cost side of the house, of CS being able to tell its story not only to our customers, here's the value you're getting, here's the outcomes you're experiencing, but also being able to relay that inside the walls of your company, um, so that you are less vulnerable to, the cost cutting, or if you do have to cut, you are maybe wiser about where to cut. Um, so I think CS ops plays a huge role in being able to tell that story.
Yeah, I would agree. That's great. That's a really good point.
I've seen a couple of companies where, customer success being reduced, or maybe even eliminated altogether, or it's just a shell of itself when it's gone. And some people are asking like, oh, is the CS thing over now? It's just a really long running fad, and now it's going to be something else. And I don't have the specific answer to that, but I do sort of think, if we have not told the story of value internally well, we make ourselves vulnerable to that axe when it comes.
Sure.
I agree. Like, and it's whether we call it CS or I don't know, some other term down the road, whatever, delivering value is integral to a SaaS business model, right? Like at the end of the day, you got to make sure that customers keep coming back, and they're only going to come back for if they're getting value. So whether it's called customer success or customer value, whatever they call it, I don't know. It'll still hopefully be important further down the road.
James, it's been amazing to talk to you today. Sorry I butchered your name up there at the top of the podcast. I promise to go home and practice,
Thank you.
tonight.
I'll test you at next first Friday
That's
gathering.
right. Next time we get together, there will be a test, and I hope that I pass.
It's just Smith,
I got a
though.
couple weeks, based on the calendar and when we're recording, to get this right.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. All right. Well, appreciate you joining us today and sharing your wisdom with, our audience. And James, we wish you the best. Thanks for joining us today.
You
Thanks,
guys as
Jake.
well. Thanks a lot for having me. Have a great one.